recently shared this video over on my Instagram account, and it basically spoke about the day when I almost lost 1,000 followers as a result of me uploading one post. It sparked such a great discussion in the comment section, and I thought, do you know what? This deserves its own video. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about why I lose followers on a daily basis and why I lost so many on that day. And we're also going to be talking about why you might be losing some followers and some things that you can do to fix it. So let's get to it. All right, so let's talk about the first reason why you might be losing some followers. And spoiler alert, this is the reason why I lost so many in one day. You remember at the start I said I lost almost 1,000? Well, this was the reason why. I'm calling this reason the paradox of virality. When I come up with these names, sometimes I just think, God, how annoying am I? Why am I coming up with such extra names for these things? We're gonna roll with it. The paradox of virality. What I'm talking about here is when you upload a piece of content that performs well for you or goes viral, whatever viral might mean for you, and it actually triggers you to lose a lot of followers versus gaining a lot of followers. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes both can happen. Sometimes you can create a really great post and you gain a lot of followers, but you also lose a lot of followers. But there are occasions where you create a piece of content that performs really well and gets loads of engagement, and the result when it comes to your follower count is that it actually goes down. So why does this happen? If we use this post as an example, so this was the post that I shared last year that triggered me to lose so many followers in one day. The reason why this post resulted in me losing people from my audience was because it performed well. It received a lot of engagement. It received a few thousand likes. I had so many lovely comments being shared underneath it. And what that did was it triggered Instagram's algorithm to push my post out to more of my audience. If you didn't know this already, one of the core signals that Instagram's algorithm will look at when it's deciding whether or not it's going to push your content out to more of your audience, because yes, Instagram has the power to decide that, is how much engagement your post is receiving. In this case, this post was receiving a lot more engagement than my content usually does. Instagram's algorithm picked up on that and it decided to push that post out to more of my audience because it thought that more of my audience would want to see it. If the people who are seeing it are responding positively to it, then it makes sense that more people might like it too. So Instagram saw the engagement and it pushed it out to more of my audience. What then happened is that a bunch of people who may have been following me for years saw that post on their home feed. And I imagine that they saw that post and thought, who is this person?
Wait a minute. Who are you?
They probably saw that post and thought, I've not seen this girl in years. I can't remember why I followed her. They might have seen that and thought, I thought this person shared educational content about social media and content creation. This doesn't look like an educational piece of content. This is a post about her wedding. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see this person's wedding content. So I'm going to unfollow her. And by the way, guys, it's totally okay for people to feel that way. So because that post performed well for me, or because it went viral, at least within my terms, it then meant that it was pushed out to more of my audience and it triggered a bunch of people to unfollow me because simply they weren't used to seeing that content from me. Now, when I spoke about this on Instagram, there was one comment from a very lovely follower who felt like this wasn't a good enough reason for people to unfollow me or for people to unfollow you if it happens to you in the future. And if you are feeling the same, if you think, well, that's not fair, I should be able to share content from my wedding, or I should be able to share content with people and not worry that they haven't seen me in a while and therefore they might unfollow. You're completely fair in feeling that way, but I really encourage you to remember that no one owes you a follow. So your audience who follow you right now, they're not in a contract with you. They have not promised to continue following you for the rest of your life. They've not promised to enjoy all of the content that you share. It is completely their prerogative if they decide that they don't want to follow you anymore. It's their home feeds for them to curate, and they have all of the right in the world to decide to unfollow you for whatever reason. And it's important that we don't take that decision personally, right? In terms of what you should do in case you are worried about suffering from the paradox of virality, if I'm being honest, if you uploading a personal life update is going to be the thing which triggers people to unfollow you, I don't think you should do anything different. I always say that your content should be valuable, yes, but I do also say that you should allow 10 to 20% of your content to be more personal and to share some stuff what's going on behind the scenes of your life so that you can connect in your audience in a way that you can't always do through your standard valuable content. You should still feel comfortable sharing that content, and you should know that if this happens to you, it's a good thing. This has happened because most of your audience has enjoyed that post. That's amazing. And for everyone who didn't, that's also amazing because you've just purged your audience from a bunch of people who don't actually want to see your content anymore, right? Let's move on to the next reason why you might be losing followers on Instagram. All right, this is probably the most common one that I come across, and it's that you've changed your niche or you've changed your target audience. Now, I think we all probably know what a niche is. A niche is essentially one subject or one topic that you talk about on your channel. Maybe you have a few different niches, that's totally fine as well. If you suddenly change that niche, so if one day you're talking about beauty and fashion and the next day you're talking about finance, that's that's quite a big change. And with that change comes a lot of people who no longer find your content relevant to them and therefore might decide to unfollow you. When I say target audience, I'm talking about the people who you are trying to attract to your Instagram channel. So if you're someone who doesn't necessarily have a niche, but you know that you're speaking to young millennial mums, for example, but then one day you switch it up and you decide you're going to be talking to like Gen Alpha and sharing content that's going to help them go back to school, like that's a completely different audience. So the people in your existing audience, if they no longer feel like you are speaking to them, they might leave. They might decide to unfollow you, and that's okay. I have a whole video where I actually talk about how to reach your desired audience. And in that video, I talk about the repercussions of you switching your audience. Repercussions maybe isn't the right word because it seems so negative, like you've done something wrong. It's okay to switch your audience and to change your strategy or to change your niche. That's totally fine. But you have to be okay with the fact that you are going to see a drop in your engagement and you are going to lose followers as a result. The hope is that when you stick to it and you do a really great job at speaking to this new audience, you begin to attract the people that you want, and therefore your audience size grows and is filled with the people who you're actually trying to speak to. So in the long term, the results should be positive, but in the short term, it will have a negative impact on your engagement and your audience size. On the flip side, maybe you haven't changed your niche, but how your audience feel about your niche has changed. By the way, guys, you remember when I filmed a video talking about an Instagram feature called Flipside, and I was like taking the piss saying no one uses the word flipside. I use it all the time. Every time I use it, I'm like, God, Jade, that was embarrassing because you use the word flipside all the time. Anyway, so this other reason why you might be losing followers is a tricky one because it actually has nothing really to do with you. It's more about everyone else and how they're responding to your niche. Because, spoiler alert, how people feel about your niche and your content will change over time. And this is becoming more and more apparent right now because we're now reaching the stage of social media and content creation where we're actually starting to identify the life cycle of a niche. We couldn't do that early on because we didn't have enough data and we hadn't been doing this for long enough, but we can now. So let me break this down for you. I read an article on Medium which spoke about this concept that a niche has a life cycle. And essentially it compared the life cycle of a niche to a product life cycle. Anyone who hasn't studied marketing or business or hasn't watched any of my videos before, because I actually think I've spoken about the product life cycle a few times before. Essentially what the product life cycle is a map which breaks down the different phases that a product goes through. So there's its introduction phase where it's released into the market, then it has its growth phase, then it has its maturity phase where everyone kind of gets used to it and it becomes a bit boring. Then it has a decline phase, and then the good products have like its reinvention phase where it's updated and then released back into the market, and then the product life cycle starts all over again. When it comes to a niche life cycle, it's pretty similar. So the idea is that when a niche is like new to the world of social media, it starts off fairly slow and then it has this huge spike during its growth phase, and then it really mellows out afterwards. And what this graph on the screen is trying to show you is basically an influencer's or a content creator's ability to succeed in that niche depending on where in its life cycle it is. So this is basically saying that if you join a niche like fashion, which you could argue is in its maturity phase, if you join that niche now, then you might struggle to succeed. I do not subscribe to this idea. I'm not going to lie. This article is great. This is one part that I don't agree with. Of course, some niches are oversaturated, and therefore when you join a niche which is undersaturated and about to blow up, of course you have a bigger chance of seeing success. I get that completely. The part what I don't agree with is this idea that if a niche is in its maturity phase and there's no point joining it. I don't believe that at all. I've worked with and know of so many creators who are fresh to a niche that's been around for 10 years and see so much success in it. If your content's good and it's high quality and it's valuable, you can still see success in whichever niche you choose to join. Anyway, let's bring it back to the purpose of this video. When it comes to losing followers, this concept is relevant because the idea is that if you are in a niche that's in its decline phase, you might actually start to lose followers as a result of that. Even though your content is still high quality, even though you haven't changed your niche, other people's relationship with your niche might change and therefore they might decide to unfollow you. This is also relevant when you create content that's for a specific group of people that have one specific challenge. And when they don't have that challenge anymore, you are no longer relevant or useful to them. I am definitely in that category. I'm sure I have got thousands of people in my Instagram audience, YouTube audience, wherever they are, who subscribed to my content when they were trying to learn X. They were trying to grow their Instagram. They were trying to start their business. And then at some point, my content no longer became relevant to them because either they quit their business or decided not to grow on Instagram, or they achieved achieved the things they were trying to achieve and they no longer need me anymore. So their relationship with my content has changed despite my content itself not changing. So therefore, they might have decided to unfollow me as a result, and that's okay. Remember what I said before? We are not entitled to anyone's attention. So if you do ever decide to unfollow me as a result of that, just know that I'm okay with it, and I'm thankful that you were ever in my audience in the first place. So what should you do to avoid this trap? Well, first off, you want to pick a niche based on your passion rather than its like popularity. So avoid going into a niche because you're like, oh, this is trending right now. Because if you do that, then you're more likely to suffer as a result of it declining at a future date. If you choose a niche based on your passion, that passion is going to be the thing that carries you through the maturity phase, the decline phase, the reinvention phase, whatever phase that niche is going through, your passion will remain. If you're already in a niche and you're worried that niche is going through its decline phase and you're wondering how you can move on to the reinvention phase, I want you to think about the format of your content rather than the niche or the topic. Because as I said, you should be picking your niche based on a passion. So don't just leave your niche behind because you're like, oh, it's not popular anymore. Instead, figure out ways that you can still talk about your niche or the same topic, but in a different format, in a way that feels fresh to you, right? If you don't know where you stand on this and you don't know if you want a niche yet, and if you do want a niche, what niche it's going to be, and yada, 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 watch this video because I talk all about niching. Okay, guys, there is an elephant in this room. Have you noticed? There's an elephant in this room, and that elephant is the final reason why you might be losing followers. And it's always a tough conversation to have, guys. You might be losing followers because your content just isn't cutting it. It's not as good as it used to be, and therefore people are noticing and they're unfollowing you as a result. This is one of the few moments when I actually am so happy that I'm speaking to a camera lens and not directly to a person, because this is always such an awkward topic to bring up. I want to put on the record as well, guys, I have experienced this. I've gone through my own flop errors where my content has just been a bit like, bleh, and people have picked up on it and they've unfollowed me as a result. And that's completely fair and also completely within mine and yours control. So let's talk about some things that you can do if you feel like this might be the reason why you are losing followers. First thing I want you to review is the quality of your content. I'm talking about the audio and the visual quality of your content. So is the audio crisp or not? Can you actually hear you when you're speaking? Do you use captions on your content so that people can read along if they don't have their volume up? Is the visual element high quality? Is your content pixelated and blurry, or is it really clear and crisp? If you're filming reels, for example, is it filmed in vertical format where it fills up the whole screen? That's the kind of stuff you want to be looking out for. Once you've checked the quality, I want you to check the content. So is your content valuable? I always talk about the 4 key value points, and the idea is that your content should be hitting at least one of these. So educational content, entertaining content, relatable content, and inspirational content. Is at least 80% of your content hitting one of those value points? If it's not, then that might be the reason why people are unfollowing you. Lastly, I want you to look at your consistency. Are you sharing content on a regular basis, or are you popping up on people's feeds once a month? Because spoiler alert, if you're doing the latter, it's not good enough and people might unfollow you as a result. Okay, my loves, that is the end of today's video. I hope you found it useful. If you feel like hanging around, I recommend watching this video. It's all about Instagram's new algorithm because yes, there is a brand new algorithm. It is significantly different to how the algorithm used to operate. So I do recommend you watch that video so that you can get all the information you need to utilize it in the future. Thank you so much for watching as always. Can't wait to see you in my next video.